Roadhouse is a movie that perfectly represents everything wrong with cinema. Now, I know that seems like an overly dramatic way to describe a movie, and especially one that's as harmless and inoffensive as this one is. Movies like this just really upset me, and I want to talk about it. These movies seem to come out every year. A big budget movie with a big A-list star and some celebrity cameos that is all aimed at making as much money as possible. I mean, the whole film's just lazy. It doesn't have anything interesting other than some semi-decent action scenes. Even Jake Gyllenhaal seems pretty uninterested in it, and it really shows. This was one of the worst ever performances that he's had, in my opinion. Then there's Conor McGregor, who somehow manages the almost impossible task of essentially playing himself, yet still putting in a bad acting performance. Post Malone also gets a cameo. He might as well change career paths at this point and be an actor, because he's in more movies than he's been in music in the last few years. Then there's the rest of the characters, who I could not name for the life of me. There's the Roadhouse owner, who gets surprisingly little screen time despite the entire plot of the movie revolves around someone trying to destroy the business that's been in her family for generations, like the only thing that she really has in her life. So I'd probably be a bit more proactive if I was her. Then there's the other two security guards who are just kids who seem to become expert fighters after just one lesson with Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Dalton. Then there's the hot paramedic whose role is to be hot and need saving, I guess. And that's all she really does throughout the entire film. And finally, the villain, whose whole motivation is to try and destroy this roadhouse so he can build a resort or hotel of some kind. Oh no, they keep it very vague. It doesn't really make any sense, especially when you could build it like anywhere else. And despite the fact that he seems to have infinite wealth, loads of henchmen and criminal connections, and the entire local police force on his payroll, his whole evil plan basically hinges on giving Conor McGregor a golf club and telling him to have at it. I guess he just really wanted the roadhouse gone, but he couldn't have just killed the owner and burned it to the ground during the night, because he would have gotten away with it. I mean, him and the sheriff of the town are literally buddies, and they're both in on this criminal enterprise together, so he could have very easily covered that up if he really wanted it. But the entire plan is foiled by Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays a retired MMA fighter who lost all his sponsorships and his contract with the UFC after killing someone in a fight, which, has to be said isn't a great look. But his life of a nomad who's guilt-stricken is cut short when he gets a job offer to be a security guard for the roadhouse in a place called Gas Key, which is apparently a really rough place. Before that, he tries to kill himself by briefly parking on a train track, and then he backs out, but almost dies anyway, which was completely unnecessary, but there you go. I'm not sure why you'd need a retired MMA fighter to protect a bar in Florida, but I mean, to be fair, I've heard about some of the things going on down there, so that might be one of the most believable aspects of the film, is that you would need someone with that level of skill to defend the crackheads that are fighting. Then, after he beats up a bunch of thugs, he takes them all to the hospital and meets a super hot doctor, or nurse, or whoever she is, I don't really know, who just throws herself at him for some reason. I guess she knew she needed to be saved by him later on, so she just decided to just try and build a friend who could maybe save her. Another character Jake Gyllenhaal meets is a friendly young girl who gives him a book just randomly out of nowhere. I guess for a guy who's been witnessed killing someone by millions of people, he has just a really approachable personality and nice guy attitude, I guess. Anyway, this girl serves as an emotional plot point later on in the film after the conflict just gets too much for old Jakey boy, and he gets ready to leave Glass Key forever as he just can't take the violence anymore, despite showing no indication that he was ever going to get beaten by any of the guys there. But then he sees the girl and her dad have had their bookstore burnt down by the bad guys, because apparently they think, let's not try and kill this guy again, because that failed once, we can't ever try that again. Why don't we instead just, burn down this girl that he knows dad's store in case that sets him off? And fair play, it did, because it put him on a path of revenge, and he tries to get even. Then his hot paramedic girlfriend gets kidnapped, and then he responds by blowing up the bad guy's boat, which she is on, which isn't a smart plan, but she gets away with it, just. And then Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor are fighting on a speedboat, and they crash into the roadhouse, the thing they were trying to protect for the whole movie. Then Conor McGregor and Jake Gyllenhaal have one last shirtless fight in the roadhouse, and then, just as Conor McGregor is about to kill Jake, there has to be some sort of interruption, and it's the main villain, Ben, who walks in from just off screen after he's just almost died in 3 separate boat crashes, and tells McGregor to kill Gyllenhaal, which he was literally just about to do. He didn't have to say anything. So what does Conor McGregor do upon hearing this perfectly reasonable request from his criminally connected boss, who's very wealthy and has a very powerful dad? Well, he does the perfectly reasonable thing, which is he goes up to him and breaks his neck with his bare hands. Which was both completely unnecessary and biologically impossible. Then, whilst this is going on, Gyllenhaal gets back up after, only being stabbed like once. It's no big deal. He then stabs Connor 10 times with a broken piece of wood and kills him. And then the sheriff turns up, who was a bad guy throughout the entire film. He agrees to cover up everything and let Jake Gyllenhaal's character go because the bad guy, Ben, abducted his daughter earlier, which was a bit of a dick move on his part, to be fair. And yeah, that's pretty much the plot. I mean, everything about this movie is just safe. It would fit perfectly into the Marvel Cinematic Universe if it had a superhero in it. It was just so predictable. You could see where everything was going at every point. It had terrible humour, predictable plot lines, extremely forced conflict, and action so cut to bits you can't even tell who's winning until one guy just fucking dies. I thought this type of movie was going to die with the MCU. However, if anything, they're becoming more common now than they have been before. I guess despite all the hard work of the great filmmakers of today, money still does do the talking in Hollywood. And when you can invest in a film that is guaranteed to make a profit, given the big names involved and the clever marketing that they had when they were at the UFC, why bother trying to make good movies? Best way I could describe Roadhouse is if you gave a 12-year-old boy $85 million and said, make a movie you would like to have playing in the background whilst you play Subway Surfers or something on your phone. It's got loud action, unfunny jokes, and just enough recognisable famous people in it to keep the masses at least semi-interested throughout the majority of the film. All in all, the movie fucking stinks, but it probably made Jeff Bezos a metric ass ton more money than he already had, so, what the fuck do I know? I'm just an idiot with a microphone. But I know one thing, and this movie, as I said before, fucking stinks. Subscribe now, please. Bye.